Most people do not make one big money mistake. They make the same 5 mistakes over and over again for their entire lives, and they never once realize it. That is the part that breaks my heart, not the mistake itself, the repetition. The quiet, invisible repetition of a pattern that was never taught to them, never shown to them, never named for them, and because it was never named, it could never be stopped. I have spent more than 70 years watching people, brilliant people, hardworking people, people who deserved far better than what the financial system gave them, walk directly into the same 5 traps their parents walked into before them. Today, I am going to name every single one. I am going to teach you exactly how each one works, why it feels like the right thing to do in the moment, and what it costs you over a lifetime. I call this the repetition trap, and most of you watching this right now are already inside it. Let us begin. The first mistake is the one that is dressed up to look like wisdom. I call it the safety illusion. For as long as I can remember, the most common piece of financial advice passed from parent to child in this country has been some version of this sentence: save your money, keep it safe, do not take risks. And on the surface, that sounds like responsibility. It sounds like the voice of experience speaking to you across the kitchen table. But I want to show you what that advice actually costs, because the cost is so large that most people, when I show them the number, refuse to believe it. Inflation in the United States has averaged approximately 3% per year over the past century. A standard savings account at most American banks currently pays between 0.1 and 0.5% annually. That means if you follow the advice to keep your money safe in a bank account, you are losing purchasing power every single year. Not dramatically, not visibly, but steadily, reliably, and without exception. $10,000 sitting in a savings account for 30 years does not grow into security. It shrinks, in real terms, into approximately $4,100 of purchasing power. You did not save your money. You simply watched it evaporate slowly enough that you did not feel the heat. The safety illusion is not recklessness. It is the appearance of caution masking the reality of guaranteed loss. Real safety is not the absence of risk. Real safety is building assets that grow faster than the cost of living. Everything else is simply a slower way to fall behind. The second mistake is the one I see most commonly, even in people who have high incomes, even in people who have impressive careers and enviable salaries. I call it the income addiction. Most people believe that the path to wealth is earning more money. They work harder, they get promoted, they negotiate raises, they take on extra hours, extra responsibilities, extra stress, and their income goes up. And then something extraordinary happens. Their spending goes up at exactly the same rate, sometimes faster. This is not a moral failure, it is a mechanical one, because a salary, no matter how large, is a linear income. You trade 1 hour of your life for one amount of money, and when you stop trading, when you get sick or tired or old, the money stops too. John D. Rockefeller, the first American billionaire, understood something that most workers never learn. He said, and I agree with him completely, that he would rather earn 1% from 100 people's efforts than 100% from his own. That is not exploitation. That is architecture. That is understanding that a business, an investment, a royalty, a dividend, these things earn money while you sleep, while you are sick, while you are on vacation, while you are sitting in a rocking chair at the age of 80, watching the sun go down. A salary cannot do that. A salary is a faucet that only runs when you are standing at the handle, and the moment you step away, it stops. The income addiction is the belief that working harder is the same thing as building wealth. It is not. Working harder earns you a living. Building assets earns you a life. The third mistake is the one that costs the most, and yet it looks the most harmless in the moment. I call it the impatience tax. Compounding is the closest thing to a financial miracle that mathematics has ever produced. Albert Einstein, whether or not he actually said this, was supposedly so impressed by compound interest that he called it the eighth wonder of the world. I do not know if he said it, but I know it is true. Let me show you exactly how true it is. If you invest $10,000 at the age of 25 and earn an average annual return of 10%, the rough historical average of the S&P 500 over long periods, by the time you are 65, that single investment is worth approximately $452,000. You did nothing. You touched nothing. You added nothing. Time did all the work. Now here is where the impatience tax becomes devastating. If you wait until you are 35 to make that same investment, just 10 years later, the result at age 65 is approximately $174,000. The same investment, the same return, the same discipline. But you started 10 years late and you paid a tax of nearly $280,000 for that impatience. And here is the part that genuinely saddens me. Most people do not stop at waiting. They start, they watch the market go up and down, they get frightened, they sell, they wait for things to feel safe again, they buy back in higher, they sell again when it drops, and they spend their entire investing life paying the impatience tax in installments, never understanding why compounding never seems to work for them the way the textbooks say it should. Compounding does not punish stupidity, it punishes impatience. And impatience is the one mistake that time itself cannot fix. The fourth mistake is one that I have spoken about indirectly for years, but today I want to name it directly. I call it the knowledge debt. Every year, millions of people graduate from high schools and universities in this country. They can solve calculus problems. They can write essays on the French Revolution. They can identify the themes in Shakespeare. And they walk out of 12 to 16 years of formal education with absolutely no understanding of how a tax bracket works, how compound interest accumulates, how a balance sheet is read, how inflation erodes savings, or why the difference between a stock and a bond matters for their retirement. This is not an accident. Schools teach you to be a productive participant in the economy. They do not teach you how the economy actually works at the level where real wealth is built or lost. The knowledge debt is the gap between what you were taught and what you needed to know, and it accrues interest just like financial debt does. Every year you make decisions about money without understanding money. That ignorance costs you. It costs you in the investments you do not make. It costs you in the tax advantages you do not know exist. It costs you in the financial products sold to you by people who understood the fine print and trusted that you did not. I have said many times that the best investment you can ever make is in yourself. I do not mean self-help books and productivity courses. I mean the specific, technical, unglamorous knowledge of how money actually moves in this system, how taxes reward capital over labor, how compound growth works in practical terms, how to read a financial statement, and how to distinguish between a business that is genuinely worth owning and a story dressed up to look like one. The richest people I have ever known were not necessarily the most naturally gifted. They were the most financially literate. And financial literacy is not a talent. It is a decision. It is the decision to close the knowledge debt before it closes you. The fifth and final mistake is the one that I believe is the most emotionally painful to confront, because it is not about ignorance and it is not about fear. It is about identity. I call it the lifestyle inflation trap. Here is how it works. A person earns $50,000 a year and they struggle. They dream of the day when they earn $80,000. They promise themselves that when they get there, they will start saving, start investing, start building something real. And then they get to $80,000 and life gets bigger. The apartment gets nicer. The car gets newer. The vacations get longer. The restaurants get more expensive. And the savings rate stays exactly where it was when they earned $50,000. Then they earn $120,000 and the same thing happens again at a higher altitude. The house is bigger. The car is better. The private school tuition enters the equation. And I want to be very clear about something here because I am not preaching austerity. I do not believe that the purpose of wealth is suffering. I believe in enjoying what you have. But I also believe this, and I believe it based on 70 years of watching people build wealth and fail to build it. The size of your lifestyle relative to your income is not a measure of your success. It is a measure of your financial vulnerability. Every dollar you spend upgrading your lifestyle is a dollar that cannot be working for you while you sleep. Charlie Munger, my partner of more than 50 years, once said something I have thought about ever since. He said that the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. The lifestyle inflation trap is the most common way that ordinary people interrupt their compounding, not in a single dramatic moment, but in 100 small upgrades, each one individually justifiable, each one collectively catastrophic. The most quietly wealthy people I have ever known did not look wealthy. They drove ordinary cars. They lived in ordinary houses. They ate at ordinary restaurants. And underneath that ordinary surface, They were building something extraordinary, slowly, patiently, invisibly, through the ruthless discipline of never letting their spending reach the ceiling of their income. Now, I want to speak to the person who is sitting with this information right now and feeling something uncomfortable. You are not feeling fear exactly. You are feeling recognition. You are recognizing yourself in one of those 5 mistakes, maybe more than one. And the instinct, I know, is to defend yourself, to say that your situation is different, that you did not have the same opportunities, that the system is stacked against you. And you know what? On some of those points, you are right. The system does favor capital over labor. The tax code is written for owners, not employees. Financial literacy is not taught in schools because an economically educated population is harder to exploit. These are real things. They are real disadvantages. I am not dismissing them. But here is what I know with complete certainty after a lifetime spent in this world. The person who uses a real disadvantage as a permanent excuse never escapes it. And the person who names the disadvantage, understands the mechanics of it, and builds a deliberate plan around it, that person finds a way. Not always quickly, not always easily, but they find a way. Because wealth, at its foundation, is not about starting conditions. It is about decisions compounded over time. I want to leave you with an image that I think about more often now than I ever did when I was young. I want you to imagine a person who is 78 years old, sitting somewhere still, looking back across a life of work, decades of effort, decades of earning, decades of showing up. And the question they are asking themselves is not whether they worked hard enough. Most people worked hard enough. The question is whether they worked on the right things, whether the money they earned went to work for them, or whether it simply passed through their hands on its way to someone else's balance sheet, whether they broke the 5 patterns, or whether the 5 patterns broke them. You are not that person yet. You are here, today, which means you still have time to make the next decision differently. You do not need to do everything at once. You need to do one thing first. Name what you are doing. Name the safety illusion if you are living in it. Name the income addiction if you are feeding it. Name the impatience tax if you are paying it every time the market drops and you panic. Name the knowledge debt and start closing it 1 page at a time. Name the lifestyle inflation trap and decide, today, that your savings rate will not shrink as your income grows. The door to the cage is open. It has always been open. The cage is not poverty. Poverty is a circumstance. The cage is the decision to keep doing what you have always done and expect a different result. You are not trapped by the 5 mistakes. You are only trapped if you never name them, and now you have. That is all. Thanks for watching.